Welcome. Today is the fourth day of Tammuz, the 10th of July. We're up to the fourth reading of Parshat Chukat. And in the fourth reading, the Israelites are at the gates of the land of Canaan. And what stands in their way is the territory of Edom, or Seir, as it was called before the Edomites. The Edomites are, of course, the descendants of Esau, the brother of Jacob. And so, when Moses needs to approach them and ask them to go through their territory, to pass through their territory, to get to the land of Canaan, and their territory is at the very southern end of the land of Canaan. They're sitting basically between what today is the Gulf of Eilat, or Aqaba as it's called, the Red Sea, and the Dead Sea. And they're sitting to the east of it. And that was exactly where they were. And they didn't want to have to go around Edom and eventually around Moab also, which would take them a long time. So they asked to pass through their territory. But what's interesting is the way that Moses approaches them. And he says like this. We're looking at Numbers 20, verse 14. Moses sent messengers from Kadesh, where the Israelites were, to the king of Edom. And he says to them to say the following: "So say Israel, your brother," he says, "Israel, your brother. You know of all the hardship that has befallen us. Our fathers went down to Egypt, and so we sojourned in Egypt for a long time, and the Egyptians mistreated us, and our forefathers, we cried out to God, and he heard our voice. He sent an emissary, and he took us out of Egypt. Now we are in Kadesh, a city on the edge of your border. So please let us pass through your land. We will not pass through fields or vineyards, nor will we drink water of well." And here he means to say, we won't drink from the water of Miriam's well. We will buy water from you. And there's a lot to learn from that. We will, in other words, when you come to a restaurant, don't come with food. When you come to a restaurant, buy the water, even if it's that, whatever it is, because that is part of what it means to be hosted by someone. We will walk along the main highway, and we will turn neither to the right nor to the left until we have passed through your territory. But Edom replied to him, "You will not pass through, lest I go out to greet you with the sword." So that didn't work out very well. But what we want to concentrate on is Moses' first words. "So says Israel, your brother." Right away starts off with the fact that Edom and Israel are brothers. Again, they're the descendants of Esau, we're the descendants of Jacob. And in a certain sense, the way to look at this is that Jacob and Esau are like a thesis and an antithesis, which need to form some kind of synthesis. Now, this synthesis is very complex because they're about as opposite as people can be. Esau was a man of the field, a hunter, and Jacob was a man of the tent, a scholar. They look at the world from completely different points of view. But we understand that these two points of view have to combine in some way. And the amazing thing is that there is a Hasidic tradition from Reb Pinchas of the brother of Shmalki of Nikolsburg. He was a Talmud, a student of the Maggid of Mezrich. He was considered one of the greatest scholars in the Hasidic tradition, scholars of the revealed tradition of Torah. And he writes that this synthesis already happened. When did this synthesis happen? He says, when Jacob was accosted by Esau's angel, on the eve of his returning to the land of Israel from his time in Haran, where he married his 2 wives, eventually 4 wives, and had all his children, except for Benjamin. And when he was on his way back, Esau's angel was his Satan, it says. Satan in Hebrew is not necessarily a bad word. Satan means anybody who opposes you, the opposition. And there was a lot of opposition to Jacob returning. Why? For the same reason that Moses here says and tells the Edomites about their whole story about in Egypt. Why is this? Because they all knew, both Esau and Jacob knew traditionally, that Abraham had been promised the land of Canaan, but that there would be 400 years of exile to his descendants before that would happen. And interestingly, Jacob took upon himself part of that exile. He went to Haran. At the same time, Esau was still in the land of Canaan. He still lived with his parents in Hebron. The same thing, says Moses here, happened after those 2 passed on, and the Jewish people went down, the Israelites went down to Egypt, and they fulfilled that vow that God had made to give the land of Canaan to Abraham and his descendants, but that there would be 400 years of exile. And says Moses here, we went into exile for both of us. We already did it. So we've already fulfilled that part of the bargain between, or the covenant between God and Abraham. And so let us through, because now we've come to fulfill the second half. But again, this is a opposition. It's a Satan in that sense. And again, I know that in the American Christian context, the word Satan is horrible and terrible. But again, Satan, lesaten in Hebrew, is a verb. It means to oppose someone. It means to simply hinder their progress. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's even evil. And that's the way this needs to be seen. That after everything is done and finished, when we look back at history, we come and we say, and it's hard to say this, but it's what history is about in the end, that everything that we had to endure at the hands of Esau was an opposition that made us grow. It's an antithesis to our thesis. Or in this case, one might even say that since Esau was born first, we're the antithesis to his thesis. And his thesis is that the primary part of life is life in this world, the physical, material world that we live in. Whereas Jacob comes with a new idea, the antithesis, which comes and says, no, but there's a spiritual side to life. And that spiritual side is just as important. In the end, something has to synthesize the 2 approaches. And so says Reb Pinchas that happened when Jacob struggled with the angel, the archangel of Esau, the Satan that he was opposed by. It's called Stano shel Esav, the opposition from Esau. And the synthesis already occurred. What was the synthesis, he says? That at the end, Jacob held on to him. That's like the antithesis holding on to the thesis, saying, okay, I'm not going to let you go with your view of the material world being the more important one. I want to hang on to you, but bless me. Bless me with something of your own. And he did. What did he say to him? He said to him, from now on your name will not be Jacob, but your name will be Israel. And so, says Reb Pinchas, Israel is indeed the superior, higher name of the Jewish people. It's true that we're also called Jews and we're called by other names as well, but Israel is, in Hebrew it's called Shem Ma'ala, the name that is really our essence. And that could only be discovered and given and revealed by Esau's Satan. Only by the thesis that the material world is just as important could Jacob come to the level of becoming Israel. It was dependent on this interaction with what Esau represented. And so that synthesis is the same synthesis that we're looking for now. For 2,000 years, Jews have been, one might say, the scholars of the world. Strangely enough, when people want to talk about the contribution of the Jewish people to the modern world, they talk about how many Nobel Prizes have been won by Jews, something like 20 or 25%. But that, all it does is, it sort of is a fallback on the exile type of, the diaspora type of Jew, whose interest is only in the scholarship, whose interest is in the ideas. But there has to be a synthesis. The new synthesis, which has to come in our times also, between Jacob and Esau, in these words that Moses says, your brother Jacob, your brother Israel. Why am I your brother? Because you named me Israel. You yourself gave me this name. You gave me this name as a synthesis between the two of us. That becomes the cornerstone of the relationship. In other words, I don't know how much we have to learn spiritually from you, but we have a lot to learn about the physical world from you. We have a lot to learn about engaging the physical from you. And it must be Achicha Yisrael. It must be your brother Israel. It must come from a place of brotherhood, a place of brotherly love even. And that's the way that it's seen. The Zohar says that there are two different rectifications in the world that need to happen. There's the rectification of Yishmael, the son of Abraham, from Hagar, who is the father of the Arabs and subsequently all the Muslims in the world, and between Isaac and Esau. Isaac had a son, his name was Esau. They have to be joined together. He didn't have just one son, he had Jacob and Esau. And Esau is still Isaac's son. But the Zohar says something really revolutionary. It says that to rectify the relationship with Esau, it has to come from Abraham, not from Isaac. Abraham is all loving kindness. And that's exactly what Moses says here. I'm coming to you with loving kindness. I'm coming to you with love, brotherly love, to create the synthesis. But when it comes to Yishmael, the Zohar says, that will have to come from Isaac. Isaac is all might. Because that's the language that Yishmael wants to hear, because that's the language that he respects. That's the language that speaks to him. But when it comes to Esau, when it comes to the Western world, it has to be a message of love. It has to be a message of companionship, of brotherhood. Of course, that doesn't take away from our identity, but to understand that in the end, this name Israel was only created when the thesis and the antithesis of Jacob and Esau were united into a single synthesis. This obviously is a very big topic and needs to be discussed. We've discussed it in the past. There are certain places I've discussed it, and Rav Ginsburg has discussed this in length today. But most of it today is that we want to give the scholarship, the spiritual side, and hoping that when this spiritual side is understood properly, it will unify correctly with the material side that's brought by the Western world. Thanks for joining today. Hope to see you tomorrow.